minute and a half.
Ready?
I'm so slow on social.
This is Decision 2022 on KOB4. Tonight, the New Mexico 3rd Congressional District debate with Democratic Representative Teresa Fernández and Republican challenger Alexis Martinez Johnson. Now, our moderators, Tessa Mentis and Matt Grubbs.
And good evening, New Mexico. We are 11 days away from Election Day, if you're keeping count. I'm Tessa Mentis.
And I'm Matt Grubbs. This election, New Mexicans will decide who will represent us in Congress. And tonight is the last of our congressional debates before Election Day.
In this election, we are using new district maps. In past years, District 3 usually represented Rio Rancho and northern New Mexico. Well, with the new boundaries, it lost most of Rio Rancho, but now represents a large swath of eastern New Mexico, stretching as far south as Hobbs and Roswell.
That's right. Running to represent this district is incumbent Democrat Teresa Fernández. Opposing her tonight is Republican Alexis Martinez Johnson.
They are both joining us here at KOB4 this evening. Welcome to both of you. Here are the rules that our candidates have agreed upon. They will each have 90 seconds to introduce themselves. Then they will have 60 seconds each to answer our questions.
We want to encourage conversation tonight about our topics, so they will also have up to 30 seconds each for a rebuttal if they would like it. After that, it's up to us, the moderators, to decide if we want to clarify something or have a little bit more conversation. Finally, each candidate will have 60 seconds to deliver closing remarks.
And again, thank you both for being here. We flipped a coin to determine the order of opening and closing statements. Representative Teresa Fernández, you will begin.
I'm Congresswoman Teresa Fernández. A daughter of rural New Mexico. I was raised to protect what we love. I went to Head Start at West Las Vegas and was trained as a rebellious lawyer at Stanford Law. What does a rebellious lawyer do? Listen. For 30 years, I have been listening to the needs of my community and delivering, building health clinics, schools, and small businesses. As your Congresswoman, I'm still listening and delivering. When the Forest Service started 2 fires, I held them accountable, delivering $2.5 billion to help pay for what was lost. When the VA wanted to shut down 4 rural veterans health clinics, I helped keep them open. But we must also invest in the infrastructure our communities need to thrive. I am bringing home millions of dollars to help expand broadband. I'm funding clean water projects from Gallup all the way to Eastern New Mexico Water Project. I'm the mother of 3 beautiful children, a cancer survivor, a sister who lost 2 beloved brothers to addiction. My work is inspired by the pain New Mexicans feel, but also by the opportunities we can create together. With fierce love and deep understanding, I will continue to listen and deliver for you if you will re-elect me on November 8th.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Alexis Martinez Johnson, you go next.
My abuelos raised me on the south side of Roswell. My grandpa worked for the Parks and Rec Department in Roswell, and my grandma was a janitor. Being in this race and becoming an engineer was not in the statistics of the area. And quite frankly, today we have less opportunity. Mi nombre es Alexis Martinez Johnson, And I'm an engineer. I've worked with children. I've taught them and coached them. And I'm a working mother. And politics, it really wasn't in the plans. But after 23 years of the same representation, what do we have to show? Our crime is the second highest in the entire nation. We are last in education. And quite frankly, we need a change. We need a proven leader. And that's why I'm running for opportunity. It is a calling now. My opponent voted to hire 87,000 IRS tax agents. Teresa also voted to give tax breaks to millionaires from New York to California. In addition to that, she sent stimulus checks to prison inmates. We are struggling in here in New Mexico, and if you think that New Mexico is headed in the wrong direction, it's time to make a change. If you want to vote for my opponent, you're going to be voting for higher prices, out-of-control crime, and out-of-control communities. We need a leader, and we need to make sure that we vote for New Mexico and take New Mexico to D.C. and not D.C. to New Mexico. Thank you for your vote.
Thank you both. We begin with one of our state's worst natural disasters. Your district is going to spend years recovering from the Calf Canyon Hermit's Peak fire, which, as you both know, was started by the U.S. Forest Service in 2 different spots. So our question is, what, if anything, should change about the way the U.S. Forest Service handles forest management? And Alexis Martinez Johnson, you answer first.
There has been absolute devastation in the north from Rociada, Las Vegas, and Mora, and the community members in the state have told me that from the onset there has been a complete lack of leadership. As an environmental engineer, I have proven my expertise, and from day one I would have made sure that there was infrastructure, and the hometown of my opponent in Las Vegas would not be without water, where they're brushing their teeth with bottled water right now. The city of Chalma also ran out of water. As an environmental engineer, I would be making sure that we had monthly stakeholder meetings and made sure that we had abundant and clean water. In addition to that, the acequias right now are completely filled with ash-laden debris, and we need to work with the FEMA and the DOT for continued support. In addition to that, the mental health and trauma that we're going to see in this community for time going on needs assistance, and I will be there to fund those communities for our querencia. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Representative Ledger Fernández, you may respond.
When that fire broke out, I showed up, and I have been with the people in the communities of San Miguel and Mora ever since. I called for an investigation to make sure that we'd find out how these fires were caused. I secured an independent investigation so we can make sure that a fire like this, a tragedy like this, never happens again. Importantly, we have been holding the Forest Service accountable for their errors. This is what justice looks like. When the United States blew it, they messed up, we held them accountable, and the United States is taking responsibility, and so far we got $2.5 billion to pay for what was lost. We can never make those communities whole. This is my hometown. This is where I grew up and laughed and wandered and rode horses. But we must work to rebuild and to rise from the ashes, and with those resources that I have brought to those communities, we will begin that task.
I'd like to rebut, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we have 30 seconds built in for rebuttals. So Ms. Martinez Johnson, 30 seconds.
As an environmental engineer, it is so important that we have continued forest and wildlife management right now. We cannot wait for the next situation to occur. There are many areas that need assistance right now. We need someone on the ground with proven experience, and we don't need someone with on-the-job training. These communities are still hurting, and my opponent, half a year later, is talking about providing funds. Do you know that I had Democrats call my phone and ask me for help? And I am not a politician, but I will definitely make sure that we serve the community.
Thank you, Representative Ledger Fernández. You have 30 seconds for a rebuttal as well.
So the $2.5 billion in the Hermit's Peak Calf's Canyon Fire Assistance Bill is historic. There has never been a payment like this to make amends for the errors of the Forest Service. So this is historic, and it's going to make a huge difference. I've been meeting with my constituents, multiple meetings, to talk about how it will pay for things like your business was lost, but also mental health. If you had to have mental health counseling, it will pay for it as well. Business business loss, your ranches, your fences, your roads, all of this is going to be paid for because it was the United States' fault.
Thank you, Representative. We're actually going to stay with the Calf Canyon Hermit's Peak fire. KOB4 has already talked to wildfire victims who have been frustrated by the slow pace of the money promised by the federal government. Winter is coming, and the longer it takes to get them that money, the colder it gets, and economic damage really compounds. What specifically can you do as a Congresswoman to speed the pace of wildfire recovery? Representative, you may begin.
So we passed the historic Hermit's Peak Fire Assistance Act on September 30th. We had a meeting the next week to talk about how we get that money there. A lot of the frustration comes with the fact that FEMA, the regular FEMA disaster, it's full of red tape. It's just frustrating, and people are frustrated with it. I am frustrated with FEMA, and I keep holding them accountable. The difference with the Hermit's Peak assistance is it's a brand new program. It is meant not to help, just a hand up because a disaster happened. It is meant to say, we are sorry, we are going to pay you for the losses. Now, anytime you're going to spend $2.5 billion, there needs to be regulations, there needs to be those kinds of things. Normally, regulations take a year, 6 months. We require that the regulations need to be done within 45 days. That's an example of how we built into the law. We want this done fast. We want it done quickly. That's actually written in the law.
Alexis Martinez Johnson, 60 seconds, your response.
So my opponent is talking about a meeting on September 30th. These events occurred more than half a year. That's 6 months. You're talking about April and May. The difference between a lawyer and an engineer is that I'm a problem solver. I don't continue to fiddle with a lot of language and talk. What I do is I would have been boots on the ground in the communities with the hard hat and boots. I would have had engineers, stakeholders, and community members, and we would have all worked together immediately to ensure what was going to happen was that we weren't going to have water. Right here in Las Vegas, in her hometown, they did without water. And if you're going to put commercials out and say water is life, and you're going to talk and not actually act, that is the main difference between my opponent and I, is I have the skills and expertise to deliver solutions in New Mexico.
Representative, 30 seconds for a rebuttal on this.
So the $2.5 billion that we have delivered, as I said, is historic. And the way it happened was I took the stories and the hardship of the people from northern New Mexico and shared them with my colleagues. And we got that bill passed as quickly as possible, because what you need experience on is actually getting things done in Congress, which is what we did. And I will say that we have now, you might not be aware, but Las Vegas has water because we have put in place some pre-treatment filters, and that is happening. We are going to invest even more in the Las Vegas water system that we've already met on it several times.
Representative, thank you. Ms. Martinez Johnson, you also have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Well, I just want to reiterate that if you want solutions and you want change in New Mexico, please vote for me, Alexis Martinez Johnson. I have the experience and expertise. My job and experience deals with project management. It deals with negotiations, stakeholders from environmentalists to regulators to government officials to community members, to making sure that we have the best possible solutions. And I would be meeting monthly, making sure that this never occurs again. It happened before in Los Alamos a decade ago. And here, she is a part of the federal government, and it's happened again.
Thank you both. That's a good segue actually to our next topic. It concerns energy. We would like to explain how you see the future of energy production in the 3rd Congressional District, which, as you know, now includes some of the most prolific oil fields in the world, and how you would influence it in Congress. And here's the twist. You have to do this without using the phrase, all of the above. Alexis Martinez Johnson, you may answer first. Thank you
very much for this question. My forte is in the energy industry. As an environmental engineer, I know that American-made energy is the most clean energy that we have. My opponent has voted 5 times to increase your gas bill. Your fuel cost for this winter is going to increase to almost double, and it's for extreme Green New Deal policies that fail to work together between Republicans, Independents, and Democrats in New Mexico. And quite frankly, this Democratic monopoly is failing everyday New Mexicans. There should be no reason why we're paying so much for fuel, and we should actually be sending support out to the European countries to stop Putin's expansion. My opponent continually tries to derail New Mexican energy and New Mexican jobs, and I'm here to bring back solutions and problem solving and a robust economy here in New Mexico that funds our education, which we are last in. It is not all about throwing money at things. It is about expertise and problem solving and, quite frankly, putting party policy aside and working together.
Thank you, Representative. Your answer.
New Mexico is blessed with abundant natural resources, including our oil and gas fields, which fund our schools. We also have solar and wind, which can be very important in our energy mix. I know that there are many skilled, hard-working New Mexicans in the oil and gas field. I also know that we must address the climate crisis, or else New Mexico will dry out. We won't have the beauty that we've all come to love. So we must bring down methane emissions. So what am I doing? I brought $4.7 billion to help close the abandoned wells, which are seeping methane into the air and which can be shut down so that we protect the environment while creating jobs. We can be a leader in energy with new technologies, renewable energy, and the skill and hard work of our New Mexicans.
Thank you, Representative. Yes, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you so much. It is so important that New Mexican families stay warm this winter, as you know, with snow approaching. And what my opponent advocates for is putting New Mexicans at risk. Not only can we not afford these almost double fuel costs that we're paying, but we are always seeing our gas tanks empty. And it's this administration that goes to Saudi Arabia, who killed an American journalist. They go to Venezuela and turn on Chevron's taps. And do you know that Venezuela is the second largest producer of natural gas, and they burn their clothes in the winter? We cannot take extreme policies like this, and we have to work together.
Thank you, Representative. What can a Congresswoman do to impact that? 30 seconds.
What we've been doing in Congress is really looking at how do we invest and make sure that, like, a New Mexico could be in the same footing as a Texas. New Mexico has led with regards to methane regulations, right? But I don't want Texas to have an advantage. We should have a federal suite of methane regulations so that New Mexico and Texas are on the same footing. So things we can do so that New Mexico is able to take advantage of all of our natural resources and keep everybody working and our schools funded.
Thank you, Representative. Our next question is somewhat unique to your district. It's about rural internet access. The history of broadband in your district is littered with projects that have been overpromised and under-delivered. What is the best way to ensure your district enjoys fast, reliable internet access? And Representative, you may go first.
So when I was running in 2020, internet and the lack thereof was a major issue that we all talked about, because we knew that we needed it for health, we needed it for school, we need it for business. It is essential infrastructure. I immediately was asked to participate in the World Broadband Task Force, and we have now funded $47 billion to address internet. $100 million is coming directly to New Mexico. But what I want to make sure we do is that we get more of that money, and we need to go after it through competitive grants. I want to help to make sure that our small communities, our small nonprofits can pull down that money. I don't want a single dime in D.C. when it can be put to use in New Mexico. I'd also like to point out that we are funding significant dollars for tribal broadband, and we've already seen some projects on the ground. I was just over at Santo Domingo. They have a significant $13 million grant from the NTIA. They're going to be doing, and they're their own service provider to be providing broadband into those communities.
Thank you. Alexis Martinez Johnson, 60 seconds.
Yes, we're going to definitely continue to fund broadband. But you know, when I was in Navajo Nation, I talked to a gentleman, and he was at the flea market, and he said, you know, Alexis, I've been told that we're going to get this and that, but I don't even have water. I don't have running water, and I don't have electricity. So if you don't have electricity, there's no way you're going to get to the broadband. So I think that we need to focus on those infrastructure issues here in our Indian country, as well as throughout the entire state of New Mexico, and make sure that we have an economy that works for us. And so that's where I would be looking to fund sources for that.
All right, Representative, 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
So we need to look at alternative ways of getting broadband and internet to people. There is, and I love looking at economic development alternatives, right? In Roswell, in the new part of my district, there's Sky, where they're going to be able to raise platforms which will be able to get broadband to a very large coverage area, which would be excellent for Navajo. So we want to look at all of those potential alternatives, and especially the ones that can be manufactured here in New Mexico, so we keep all of the money here, both to put up the platforms as well as for the homes and businesses which need to get the broadband.
Thank you, Representative. Ms. Martinez Johnson, you have 30 seconds if you'd like.
You know, I think that as well as broadband, there's 3 other areas that we need to really focus on. We are inundated with crime, and we're talking about Indian country as well as right here where we are in KOB, and throughout District 3 from Roswell, Artesia, Hobbs to Clayton, Shiprock, and all of these areas in between. We need to focus on reducing this crime. My opponent has voted for anti-policing solutions, which are non-solutions. And so we need to make sure that we have an economy that works, we reduce crime, and make sure that we deliver for New Mexicans.
We're going to move on to our next topic now, which is cannabis. Recreational marijuana became legal in New Mexico this year. Knowing that your district includes areas with profound addiction issues, what is your position on legalizing marijuana at the federal level? And Alexis Martinez Johnson, you go first on this one.
Well, you know, I'm an advocate for states' rights, and the people of New Mexico, through their legislative process, have wanted to have cannabis. So we do. So we are working to make sure that everybody here has what they need to fully fund small business. But on the federal level, that is not in that purview. I wouldn't be seeking to do that. I'm all about states' rights. And unlike my opponent, I'm not going to be taking, you know, D.C. here to New Mexico. I want to take New Mexico to D.C., and I want to work with New Mexicans to make sure that I am representing them to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Representative, you may answer. 60 seconds.
So what we need to do on the federal level with regards to cannabis, for those states that have already legalized cannabis, we need to remove marijuana from the controlled substance so that it is not continued to be criminalized at the federal level. Each state can then make its own decision of what it wants to do, and importantly, we need to make sure that those small businesses or larger businesses that are engaged in that industry are able to do banking. So I have actually supported the bill that would allow the industry to be engaged in the banking, right? Because they need to be able to process their reports, their businesses, they need to be able to access a bank. And so that's really a key thing. You did raise the issue about addiction. I will say, I lost 2 brothers to addiction. So I know that it is key that we put more resources in for addiction and treat it like a health care crisis that it is. And I have pushed on that and have multiple bills that I could talk about at a later date regarding that.
I'd like to rebut, please.
Absolutely. And if we can on this, let's focus on, we've heard a couple mentions of Indian country. What about native rights and cannabis? How should that play into it? Go ahead.
Well, you know, for the Indian country, they have sovereignty and they have a voice. So what they want to do is what they want to do. You know, we need to make sure that there's direct tribal consultation with the federal government. And I'm definitely in and around all of our tribal communities to make sure that, you know, we are there and listening to their voices. So thank you for bringing up that very important topic about sovereignty and voices in Indian country, which I fully support. But I want to get back to what you were talking about, addiction. And, you know, that southern border, we've had 2.7 million encounters. My opponent fails to talk about the border. It's a huge fentanyl situation. It's the #1 killer here in the United States.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez Johnson. Congresswoman, you also have 30 seconds.
With regards to the question, which was about Indian country, tribes are sovereigns. I have 30 years of experience working with regards to self-determination and tribal sovereignty, and we need to allow the tribes to decide whether or not they want to legalize it, especially if they're within a state, and that should govern the tribe's decision. Right now, the federal position on this is absolutely wrong, where they're going after people who are raising cannabis within a state where it's legal. That tribe should be able to make that decision themselves.
Thank you both. The next question concerns abortion. Since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, different states have taken different positions on abortion and reproductive rights. Should there be a nationwide policy on abortion? If not, why? And if so, what should it be? Representative, you may begin.
I believe that and all New Mexicans, the majority of New Mexicans believe that a woman must be able to make this personal decision about her health care herself in consultation with her own familia, her doctors, and her own faith, without governmental interference. So we do need a national policy so that it is safe for everybody, whether you're in New Mexico or in Texas, to access reproductive health care. Unfortunately, my opponent has said, my belief is pro-life means, and I'm quoting, my belief pro-life means no abortion is ever allowed.
False.
Close quote.
That's false.
That is a statement that she issued in a press release, and she has said this over again, which is contrary to my belief in women to be able to make these personal decisions themselves. Their health care decisions, they are complex. They need to be made by the woman herself in conversation with her doctors and her familia and her faith.
Alexis Martinez Johnson, 60 seconds.
Thank you. Quite frankly, from the promulgation of the Supreme Court and the Dobbs decision, this is now a state's issue, and I fully support New Mexican women to make the decision for New Mexican women. I would not be supporting any type of federal policy in regard to abortion because I believe in the New Mexican women and their voice. As a mother of 4 beautiful children, I'm pro-life. But you know what? We have to understand and have a compromise and know that many women face very fearful and anxiety-laden situations, and we need to allow for a compromise here. My opponent says it's okay to go to up to the point of 39 weeks birth with abortion there with no exceptions. I'm about a compromise, 15 weeks, and like I said, I'm going to do what the constituents of New Mexico want. And what the constituents of District 3 want is they want to have the ability to make those choices, but they do not want extremes up to the point of birth with no exceptions.
And that is time. We're tight on time here. Just about 15 seconds, Representative, for a rebuttal.
Just this month, my opponent received just this week, a maximum contribution from an organization that asserts a total ban on abortion. I believe it's a woman's decision. It's a health care decision. They need to make it because I don't know what those individual complications might be.
You also have 15 seconds.
Many people donate money to our campaigns. But what I'm listening to, in opposition to my opponent, who receives a lot of special interest money from New York to California, is I am here to represent the constituency of New Mexico and what they want. And right now, it is not in the federal purview to make that decision. It's a states' rights issue.
Thank you both. We have reached the conclusion of tonight's debate. It is now time for closing statements.
You will each have 1 minute to make your final case. As per the outcome of our coin toss earlier, Representative Teresa Fernández, you go first.
I'm Congresswoman Teresa Fernández, a daughter of rural New Mexico, mother of 3 beautiful children, a breast cancer survivor, sister to 2 brothers lost to addiction. My work is inspired by the pain New Mexicans face, but also by the opportunities we must create so we can all thrive. As your Congresswoman, I am lowering health care costs and energy costs, delivering infrastructure, broadband, roads, water across my district, and delivering $2.5 billion to pay for what was lost in the fires. In Jeremiah 29:11, God's plan is for us to prosper, have hope, and a future. My job in Congress is to help create that prosperity, hope, and a future. I hope I can earn your trust and vote on November 8th. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Alexis Martinez Johnson, your closing statements.
Thank you so much for all the viewers out here in New Mexico. As a daughter of New Mexico, I'm here today to serve you and to make sure that your voice rings out and rings true. It is not all about hope and wishes and desires. Right now, we need a leader, a proven leader, that is going to be boots on the ground, that reduces crime, that decreases the fentanyl ravaging our state, ravaging our country, and make sure that we have economic opportunity, that we reduce our gas bills, which my opponent voted to increase, that we make sure that we are wise with our economics and our finances, that we're not sending stimulus checks to inmates, including the Boston bomber, which they approved. This administration has not given us the opportunity that we thought that they would. They've given us hardship, and New Mexicans are hurting. We can't afford gas. We can't afford groceries. We can't even afford to go get a house right now with these interest rates. As your candidate and as your Congresswoman, I work for you, and I will hold your voice to D.C. and not the other way around. Muchísimas gracias, and thank you for your vote.
Thank you both. And with that, our congressional debate and our debate series
Absolutely
has wrapped up.
We hope to see you at 10 on the Night Beat. Go vote.